Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab, the place to be to unlock the power of English. I'm Mike, your host, and today we've got Sarah with us, our expert guide.
It's fantastic to be here.
Now, have you ever wanted to talk about your favorite animal in English? I mean, like, really express that love.
Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot, right? What are your favorite animal?
Exactly. So we're going to take a deep dive into how to do that today.
Sounds great.
So for all our listeners out there, let's start easy. What is your favorite animal? Just picture it. Got it. Now, how would you describe it in one sentence?
Yeah, even something like, my favorite animal is a giraffe because they're so tall. That's a great start.
Absolutely. Now, let's say my favorite animal is a pangolin.
Oh, cool.
It's a scaly thing that kind of rolls up in a ball. I don't even know where to start.
Okay, well, instead of just scaly, we can get specific. Like, what kind of scales are they? Big, small? Do they overlap? What color are they?
Oh, right. They're brownish gray. And yeah, they do. They overlap like armor on a little tank.
Precisely. Now you're painting a picture with words.
You know what else helps me describe things? Looking at pictures online.
Oh, that's a good tip. Visualizing things can unlock new vocabulary.
It really does. And speaking of adding details, what about talking about where the animal lives, like its habitat?
Yes. Knowing an animal's habitat helps you understand it better. You know, how it lives, why it looks the way it does.
So instead of just it lives in the ocean, we can say things like it inhabits or it's native to.
Right. You add in context.
And you know what I love? Interesting facts. Like, did you know pangolins are the only mammal completely covered in scales?
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and they're nocturnal, so they're out and about at night. Pretty cool, right?
Very cool. And, you know, sharing those kinds of facts is a great way to keep a conversation going.
It's like your English secret weapon. Now let's get personal. Why do you love this animal? Go beyond. It's cute. What makes it special to you?
That's where emotion words come in. Are you fascinated by its intelligence, inspired by its resilience, amazed by how it's adapted?
Ooh, I like that. It's more than just liking how it looks.
Exactly. It's about connecting with the animal on a deeper level.
So we've got looks, habitat, cool facts, emotions. What about what they do? How do we describe their behavior?
Ah, that's where we bring in action verbs. Instead of a cheetah runs, we can say it sprints or bounds or pounces.
Ooh, I like that. Makes slithering motions like a snake or jumps like a jaguar.
You got it. Using those verbs makes your descriptions more exciting, more dynamic.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but how do we put it all together into one smooth, impressive description?
Okay, well, let's take an example. Let's say your favorite animal is a tiger. Imagine you're telling someone about it. You could start by saying, my favorite animal is the tiger. It's such a majestic creature, and I'm totally captivated by its beauty and power. Tigers are these large, muscular cats with striking orange fur and bold black stripes. No two tigers have the same pattern, like a unique fingerprint.
That's so cool.
They inhabit dense forests and lush grasslands across Asia, perfectly blending into their surroundings. Did you know that tigers are incredible swimmers? Unlike most cats, they love the water and use it to cool down and even hunt prey.
Wow, I'm already hooked. That's a great start.
You can continue by saying, what I find most inspiring about tigers is their strength and independence. They're solitary hunters relying on their cunning and ability to stalk and ambush their prey. When a tiger pounces, it's a display of pure power and precision.
I think it's their fierce spirit and ability to adapt to challenging environments that makes me admire them so much.
I love how you use all those descriptive words: majestic, striking, lush, cutting, fierce. It really brings the tiger to life.
Right. And that surprising fact about tigers being good swimmers keeps things interesting. And then sharing your personal feelings about their strength and independence, that makes the description more engaging.
Absolutely. It's not just about listing facts. It's about showing your passion, your connection with the animal.
Exactly.
Now, I bet our listeners are thinking, okay, that tiger speech is awesome, but how do I apply this to my favorite animal?
Great question. Luckily, the same structure can be used for any animal. Let's break it down.
Okay, I'm ready. First, you clearly introduce your favorite animal and how you feel about it.
So like I could say, my favorite animal is the octopus. I'm fascinated by their intelligence and alien-like appearance.
Perfect. Next, you describe its appearance using vivid adjectives. What's its size, color, unique features?
All right, so for an octopus, I might say they have these bulbous heads and 8 long sinuous arms covered in suckers. Their skin can change color and texture instantly, making them masters of camouflage.
Nice. You're using those descriptive words. Well, now tell us about its habitat. Where does it live? What kind of environment?
Okay, so for the octopus, I could say they're found in oceans all over the world, from shallow coral reefs to the dark depths of the abyss.
Wonderful. Now inject some fun facts. Something surprising most people might not know.
This is my favorite part. Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood?
No way.
And they're so smart, they can solve puzzles and even use tools.
Amazing. All right, now for the heart of it. Why do you love this animal? What emotions does it evoke? Give us examples.
For me, it's their intelligence and adaptability that's inspiring. They're like alien geniuses who can solve complex problems and live in such different environments. It makes me wonder what other secrets they're hiding.
Beautiful. You captured those emotions. Now let's add some action. How does your animal move? What are its behaviors?
Okay, for the octopus, I could say they can squeeze their bodies through tiny spaces, propel themselves through water using jet propulsion, and even change their skin texture to mimic rocks and coral.
Fantastic. You're using those action verbs to bring your description to life?
I feel like an octopus expert now.
That's the goal. By practicing these steps, you'll not only learn new words, but also gain a deeper understanding of your favorite animal.
This has been great, but we're running out of time for this deep dive. What's next for our listeners to make these skills stick?
Well, the best way to learn something is to practice it, right? Find a quiet place and just talk out loud about your animal. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just focus on using all those great words and sentences we've been talking about.
It's like a practice run for a real conversation. And hey, if you're feeling brave, record yourself.
Oh, that's a good idea. You can listen back and see how your pronunciation is, or if you're speaking smoothly. And even better, if you have a friend who speaks English, practice with them. Talk about your favorite animal.
Yeah, talking with a friend is more fun and less pressure. And don't forget about writing. Try writing a paragraph about your animal using everything we've learned today.
Writing is a great way to remember new words, and you can work on your sentences at the same time.
Maybe we'll even inspire some future authors, but really the important thing is to have fun with it. The more you practice talking about your favorite animals, the better you'll get at English.
I completely agree. Find what works for you and enjoy the journey.
Well, Sarah, this has been an amazing deep dive into animal vocabulary and descriptions. I feel like my English is better, and I've learned so much about all these incredible creatures.
It's been wonderful being here with you, Mike. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us here at the Learn English Lab. We hope you feel ready to share your love for animals in English.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more awesome English learning tips. We're always creating new content to help you on your language journey.
Happy learning, everyone!
Until next time. Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're diving deep into something really practical, something that can actually be, well, kind of exciting.
Exciting?
Yeah. We're going to talk about how to talk about your aims in life in English and how to do it smoothly and confidently.
I like that. And hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm thrilled to be here, Mike. I'm all about giving you the words, the tools, the linguistic tools to make your goals and dreams totally clear.
I think it's interesting.
This is a skill that can open so many doors,
both
personally and professionally.
A lot of times when we learn English, we focus on like the day-to-day, ordering food, asking for directions.
Right.
But being able to articulate, what you want out of life.
I like that.
That's next level communication.
I love that.
That's where you really start sharing your dreams and passion.
Absolutely.
And honestly, even if your English isn't perfect yet, that's okay.
I agree.
That genuine energy,
yes,
it'll carry you through.
100%. Sometimes we get so caught up in being grammatically perfect,
right,
when really it's the feeling behind the words that people connect with. So before we get to the actual words themselves, let's take a minute to think about what we really mean by this word, aim. What are we talking about? I
think that's important because it seems so obvious, but I think even native English speakers can sometimes fumble this. What questions should our listener ask themselves to really pinpoint that driving force in their life?
It's about going deep, asking yourself what really gets you excited. What gets you up in the morning? What gives you that feeling of purpose? And maybe even more importantly, what kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
I like that. It's almost like figuring out your internal compass. What's your guiding star? For some people, their aim might be something very concrete. Like, I want to become a doctor. I want to start my own business. I want to travel the world. Those are very clear aims.
Exactly.
But for others, it might be more of a feeling or a way of life they want to cultivate.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer. That's what's so cool about it. It's completely individual. It's whatever truly resonates with you, what makes your heart sing,
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a handle on what our aim actually is.
Okay.
Now we need the vocabulary to match it. We need the English vocabulary. It's like upgrading our toolkit, right?
Yes. Expanding your vocabulary gives you more tools to express yourself, more accurately, more nuance. And when you're talking about something as important as your aim in life, there are certain words that can really make an impact.
Okay, so what are some of those power words, some of those key words that we can use to really elevate these conversations?
Words like aspiration, goal, passion, purpose, ambition.
Right.
Each of these has a slightly different shade of meaning,
Hmm.
and using them well can make your communication much more sophisticated.
I see. So it's not just about using big words to sound smart.
Right.
It's about choosing the right words
Exactly.
to really reflect your own feelings,
Yes.
to really express yourself authentically.
Exactly. It's about finding the words that fit you.
Okay, can you give us some examples of how these words might actually play out in a real conversation?
Sure. Let's say somebody asks you about your plans for the future.
Okay.
You could say, my aspiration is to become a musician and create music that moves people.
Hmm.
Or you could say, I have a deep passion for environmental conservation, and my ultimate goal is to work in renewable energy.
Okay.
Do you see how those different words kind of bring a different flavor to your message?
Yeah, I do. I see what you're saying. But even with the best vocabulary, we still need to structure our words effectively.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like a good story talking about your aim, it needs a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Absolutely. A clear structure keeps the listener engaged and helps your message come across clearly.
So how do we actually structure this conversation about our aims? What are the essential pieces?
I like to think about it like building a house.
Okay.
You need a solid foundation, strong walls, and a roof to tie it all together.
I like that analogy. So how do we build that house? What are the pieces?
I recommend a 4-part structure: introduction, reason, steps, and conclusion.
Okay. Introduction, reason, steps, conclusion. Let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
What goes in each of those sections?
So in the introduction, you want to state your aim directly.
Mm-hmm.
Nice and concisely. Think of it like a headline that grabs your listener's attention.
Right.
Then the reason is where you get to explain the why behind your aim.
Okay.
Like, what motivates you? What changes are you hoping to see?
Mm-hmm.
This is where you make that emotional connection.
Right. It's not just what you want, it's why you want it.
Exactly. And then the steps section, that's where you get practical.
Okay.
What are you actually doing to reach your goal? Are you studying, volunteering, networking, saving money?
Yeah.
Sharing those steps shows that you're serious and dedicated to your aim.
Right. So you're not just dreaming, you're actually building towards it.
Exactly. And finally, the conclusion is where you wrap it all up. Reiterate your aim,
Mm-hmm.
then emphasize your determination. You can express your excitement about the journey,
Yeah.
the impact you want to make. It's your final chance to leave a lasting impression.
Okay, I love this structure.
Good.
But can you give us an example? Can you show us what it might look like in action?
Absolutely. Let's imagine someone whose aim is to be a chef
Okay?
and open their own restaurant one day.
Okay.
Their introduction could be as simple as, my aim is to become a chef and have my own restaurant.
Okay, very clear, very straightforward. What about the reason? Why is that so important to them?
They could say something like, I love bringing people together through food,
Mm-hmm.
and creating a space where everyone feels welcome, where they can experience new flavors.
So it's about their passion for food, about creating a sense of community.
Exactly.
And how would they highlight the steps they're taking to make this happen?
They might share, I'm currently taking culinary classes and I'm working part-time at a local bakery to get experience.
Mm-hmm. So they're building their skills step by step.
Exactly.
And finally, to bring it all home, what might a strong conclusion look like?
They could say, I'm excited to keep learning and growing so I can eventually open a restaurant that brings joy to my community.
Okay, I love that. I love how they connected it back to their community.
Right.
And you can really feel their determination there. That's such a clear example.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
It is. But starting from scratch like that, it can be intimidating.
Yeah.
Are there any phrases, like sentence starters, that can kind of give us a jump start
Yes.
when we're talking about our aims? Kind of like having a cheat sheet.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes having those go-to phrases can make all the difference.
Yeah.
And the great thing about these phrases is they're flexible.
Mm-hmm.
You can use them as a starting point
Right.
and build from there with your own experiences.
Okay, let's hear it. What are some of these magic phrases?
Some simple but effective ones are, my goal is to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about, I aspire to, I'm working towards, I dream of.
I like those. They're simple, but you're right. You can build on those so easily.
Wait, you can make them your own.
How would they actually fit into, a natural conversation?
Okay. Let's say someone asks you, what are you hoping to achieve in the next few years?
Okay.
You could respond with, my goal is to become fluent in English and travel the world using my language skills to connect with people from different cultures.
That's great.
Or if someone asks about your hobbies, you might say, I'm passionate about photography and I aspire to have my work featured in a gallery someday.
Mm-hmm. I love how easy it is to just plug in the specifics.
Right.
To really personalize these phrases, make them your own.
Yeah, the key is to practice using them in different situations so they become second nature. The more you use them, the more comfortable and natural you'll sound.
So it's not about memorizing a script, it's about internalizing these phrases. Making them a part of your natural way of speaking.
Exactly.
It's about owning your message and expressing it with confidence. But, I know that for a lot of people, especially those learning English, even with the best phrases and structure, speaking can still be a little bit intimidating.
Oh, of course.
What are some tips for practicing and building that confidence?
It can be. And it's interesting because I think sometimes we focus so much on the words that we forget about everything else.
Yeah.
That goes into communication.
Exactly.
So much of how we communicate actually goes beyond the words themselves.
Right. And I think about things like, body language, tone of voice.
Yes.
These subtle cues.
Totally.
They can really make a difference.
100%.
How can we use those nonverbal elements to really enhance what we're saying when we're talking about our aims?
I think it all starts with awareness, like being aware of our posture, standing or sitting up straight, conveys confidence and self-assurance.
Right.
If you think about it, like if someone is hunched over and kind of mumbling about their dreams, it's hard to take them seriously.
You're right. It's like your body's reflecting how you feel on the inside.
Exactly.
If you're not confident, it's going to show.
Totally. And then there's eye contact.
Eye contact.
This is so important for building rapport.
Right.
And really connecting with your listener. It shows that you're engaged. And that you genuinely care about what you're sharing. So don't be afraid to look the listener in the eye. It really shows your sincerity.
I know some people are a little uncomfortable with eye contact.
I know, me too, sometimes.
Especially when you're nervous.
Right.
Do you have any tips for making it feel a little bit more natural?
Oh, for sure. So one thing you can try is to focus on one eye at a time, or even the space between the eyebrows. If direct eye contact feels too intense, the important thing is that it feels genuine. Not
You don't want to be staring people down.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so posture, eye contact. What about hand gestures?
Oh, I love hand gestures. I think they can be so expressive. And I think when you're truly passionate about something, your hands naturally want to get involved.
They do.
So don't be afraid to let them move, Let those hands flow with your words.
Okay, it's almost like they're painting a picture.
Totally.
Alongside your words. But are there any hand gestures we should avoid?
That's a great question because I think, there are definitely some gestures that are fine in some cultures. But not so fine in others. So it's always good to be aware of those cultural differences. A good general rule, I think, is to keep your gestures open and natural. Avoid anything like too sudden or too pointed. Things that could be misunderstood.
It's all about being respectful and mindful.
Absolutely. So it's about finding that balance between expressing yourself and being sensitive to those cultural differences.
I love that. I love how all of these things we've been talking about, they all come together to really enhance the way we communicate.
It's about creating that connection. And remember, you are the expert on your own aims. Your passion will shine through. And when you combine that with a clear, confident way of communicating, it can be so inspiring.
And, I think as we've been talking about all these strategies for expressing our aims in English, it strikes me that these skills are applicable to so many other areas of life.
Totally. It goes way beyond language.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to convince your friends to go on a trip with you. Or you're pitching an idea at work. Or even just sharing your dreams with someone you love.
I love that.
These communication skills can really open doors.
They can. They
can create opportunities.
And you know what else is really cool about it?
What?
The skills are transferable. So the more you practice expressing yourself in English, the more confident and articulate you become in other areas of your life too.
Oh, it's
like a ripple effect.
I like that.
Boosting your overall communication skills.
It's like an investment that keeps paying off.
It is. It is. And you know what else?
What's that?
Language learning is a lifelong process.
It is.
It really is.
I mean, I still feel like I'm learning English.
Oh, me too. All the time.
Every day.
Yeah. That's what keeps it fun and interesting.
Exactly.
There's always something new to learn.
Yeah.
Always room to improve.
I love that. Okay, so we're not alone.
No, you're definitely not alone.
We're all this journey together.
Yes, we are.
We're all learning and growing.
And that's what makes it so much fun.
And I think it's great to have a community.
Oh, absolutely.
People to support you.
Yeah, to cheer you on.
To share your experiences with you.
Yes, and to learn from.
And to learn from. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about finding those power words. We've talked about, mastering our nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Me too.
What are some of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah.
What resonated with you the most?
I'd love to know what you guys are struggling with.
Yeah.
What tips and strategies have worked for you.
Yeah. Let's have a conversation.
Yes, let's chat. Let's make this interactive.
Let's make this collaborative.
I love that.
Yeah. Share your insights. Ask your questions.
Yeah.
Let's learn from each other.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
We are.
And, it's so easy to get caught up in thinking about, what we haven't achieved yet.
Right.
But it's so important to remember to acknowledge
Yeah.
how far we've come.
Absolutely.
And to celebrate those wins, big and small.
Yes.
It's all about progress, not perfection.
Right.
Language learning is a journey. It's not a destination.
You got it.
So enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Embrace the bumps in the road.
Yeah. Those bumps are where you learn.
Exactly. And most importantly, have fun.
Absolutely. And, what I find so inspiring is the incredible diversity of our listeners.
I know. It's amazing.
We have people from all over the world.
Yeah.
From all walks of life.
It's so cool.
And it's really a testament to the power of language.
Yes.
To connect us across cultures.
It really is.
It's beautiful.
It is.
No matter where you're from,
Yeah.
no matter your background, language can be that bridge.
That bridge.
It's beautiful.
It,
no matter where you're from,
Yeah.
no matter your background, language can be that bridge.
That bridge.
That lets us share our stories, our dreams,
Yes.
our aspirations.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful.
It is.
And it's a reminder that we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves.
100%.
And that feeling of connection
Yeah.
can be really empowering.
Especially when we're working towards goals.
Right.
But
Yep.
it might feel challenging sometimes,
Absolutely.
knowing you're not alone.
Yeah.
Knowing there are other people out there
Yeah.
who understand your struggles,
Mhm.
who share your passion.
Yeah.
That can make all the difference.
It really can.
It can.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into talking about your aims in life in English,
Okay.
I think it's important to just take a moment to appreciate this amazing community
Yes.
of language learners that we're all a part of.
I love that. To everyone listening,
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
For sharing this journey with us.
You are all so inspiring.
Your dedication, your enthusiasm. It's amazing.
Incredible.
And we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely. So don't hesitate to reach out, ask
Yeah.
questions, share your experiences, connect with other learners in the comments.
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going.
Yes. Let's create a space where everyone feels empowered
Yeah,
to express their aims and aspirations with confidence.
I love that. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you,
Oh, thank you.
our amazing expert,
It's been a pleasure.
for sharing your wisdom and your passion with us.
It has been a pleasure, Mike. It's always inspiring
Yeah.
to connect with fellow language enthusiasts
Absolutely.
and to share the magic of communication.
And to all of our wonderful listeners out there,
yes.
thank you for joining us here at the Learn English Lab.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
We hope you feel equipped to speak about your aims in life with confidence and clarity.
Absolutely. And don't forget
Yeah.
to share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel
Yes, we'd love to have you as part of our community.
for more tips and tricks on your English learning journey.
And until next time,
Happy learning.
happy learning. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I'm really excited to be joined by Sarah, our expert for this deep dive into describing a day in your village.
It's great to be here, Mike. I'm excited to explore the world of village life through words.
Sarah, it's not just about listing off what you do, but really about transporting your listener to your village. We want them to feel like they're right there with you, experiencing the sights and sounds and even the smells.
Yeah, definitely. It's about creating this captivating story that goes beyond just saying what happened. Think of yourself as a storyteller, sharing a piece of your world with people who maybe have never even experienced village life.
So how do we even start? Where do we begin? How do we set the scene for this experience?
Well, just like any good story, it all starts with a really strong introduction. You want to grab your listener's attention right away and give them a sense of place.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I live in a village, give it some personality.
Right.
Like, I live in a charming village nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling river.
Exactly. You've already given your village a name, you've hinted at its beauty, you've added some captivating imagery. And to make it even more personal, maybe mention a unique feature or your connection to it. Something like, my family has lived here for generations and their stories echo through the cobblestone streets.
Yeah, you're giving them a sneak peek into your world, setting the stage. It reminds me of when I visited a village in India. The moment I stepped off the bus, I was just hit with this wave of the scent of spices and the vibrant colors of the market. It was sensory overload.
That's a fantastic example, Mike. Those sensory details, they're so important for bringing your story to life. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can use simple phrases to guide your listener through your morning routine, like, I usually wake up early to the sound of roosters crowing, or after freshening up, I help my mother milk the cows.
Yeah, you're painting a picture with words. So instead of just saying, I eat breakfast, you could say, I savor a breakfast of warm, freshly baked bread and sweet milky tea as the sun rises.
Exactly. You're not just telling them what you do, you're showing them. And those little details, they make all the difference.
So we've woken up, taken in the sights and sounds, and had our breakfast. Now it's time to get into the heart of the day.
Yeah, think about those activities that fill your day in the village. It might be helping your family with chores, working in the fields, or maybe attending school.
And we can use those simple phrases again to describe these actions, like, I help my father tend to the rice paddies, or after school I gather firewood with my siblings.
Absolutely. And remember, you can structure the section in a way that feels natural to you. You can follow the flow of your day or group activities by theme. Perhaps you focus on all the farming tasks or the interactions you have within the village.
That makes sense. It gives you that flexibility and personality and makes sure your story reflects your village. But it's not just about what you do, right? It's also about capturing that essence of the village.
You're absolutely right, Mike. We've talked about the acronyms, but what about the atmosphere, the scenery, the soul of your village?
So we're talking about painting a vivid picture of the landscape, the architecture, the ambiance.
Exactly. Think about what stands out visually. Is your village surrounded by lush green fields? Are there colorful houses with beautiful carvings? Is there a bustling market square where villagers gather to trade and tell stories?
So we're using those sensory details again, but this time for the village. So instead of just saying the village is beautiful, we could say the village is a tapestry of vibrant colors with small mud houses adorned with carvings and fragrant flowers blooming in every corner.
Now you're talking. You're not just describing the village, you're making the listener feel something. Don't forget about the lifestyle. What makes life in your village different from the city?
The sense of community, the slower pace of life, the way everyone knows each other and stops to chat.
Excellent points, Mike. Those are the details that will really immerse your listener in your world. Think about those unique things that make your village special and find a way to bring them into your story.
We've moved from a general intro to a more vivid picture of village life. But the day isn't over yet. What about the evening, that transition from all the busyness of the day to the calm of the evening?
You're exactly right. The evening brings a different feeling, a sense of peace and reflection as the day ends.
I remember from my trip to India, as the sun began to set, the village just transformed family. Families gathered on their porches, children played in the fading light. The air was filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. It was magical.
What a beautiful image. And you can capture that same magic by focusing on those peaceful activities that mark the end of your day.
So instead of just saying, I eat dinner, we could say, we gather around a fire, sharing stories and laughter as we enjoy a meal made with fresh ingredients from our garden.
That's it. You're not just describing the action, you're creating that feeling of togetherness. And remember, those simple phrases can go a long way. In the evening, I help my grandmother prepare dinner while she tells me stories of her childhood. Or we often have village gatherings where people sing and dance under the stars.
It's like bringing the day full circle. We started with those sounds of the village waking up, and now we're ending with these quiet moments. But there's one more important thing we haven't talked about yet.
You're right, Mike. We've talked about the activities, the scenery, the routines, but what about your feelings, your reflections on village life?
Now we go beyond just describing what we do and really talk about what it means to us.
Yeah, it's about bringing your own personality into it, connecting with the listener. Don't be afraid to express what village life means to you, what you've learned from it, why it's so special to you.
Yeah, be open and honest and let your listeners really see how much your village means to you. It's like the difference between reading a travel brochure and hearing a friend tell you about their trip.
Exactly. Think about those parts of your day that make you feel something. Maybe it's the peacefulness of walking through the fields in the morning, or the joy of sharing a meal with your family at night.
Maybe it's the contentment of listening to your grandparents' stories and knowing their wisdom has been passed down.
Yeah, those are the things that will resonate with your listeners and build a stronger connection. You can express those feelings with simple phrases like, I feel so grateful for my family and my village, or living here has taught me what community really means.
Those real emotions make the story come alive. And Sarah, it's not just about the words themselves, it's also how we say them.
You're right, Mike. Our tone of voice, our energy, it all adds to the story.
I remember when I visited that village in India, I was nervous about my English. But everyone was so nice and patient. They just wanted to talk to me, not judge my grammar.
That's wonderful, Mike. And it shows how important confidence is. Don't let being afraid of making mistakes stop you from talking. Embrace those mistakes. They're how you learn.
And remember, the more you practice, the more confident you'll get. Talk to friends, family, even practice in the mirror.
Practice makes perfect, right? But being yourself is even more important than being perfect. Let your personality come through. Don't be afraid to use humor or tell stories that make your narrative more interesting.
Like the time I tried to milk a cow and got sprayed in the face. Always a funny story. But really, those personal moments make your story more relatable and keep the listener interested.
Exactly. It's about finding the right mix between using clear descriptions and sharing your own unique perspective.
So we've talked about setting the scene, the main activities, the uniqueness of village life, and bringing in our personal thoughts and feelings. What else do we need to remember as we put our stories together?
Well, remember that storytelling is something you get better at over time. Like playing an instrument or playing a sport, you can't expect to be amazing right away.
Definitely not. It takes time and patience and being willing to learn from your mistakes, but it's so worth it.
It really is. There's nothing like the feeling of connecting with someone through a good story. And when you tell a story about your village, you're not just sharing facts, you're sharing your culture, your history, a part of you.
And when we do that, we break down walls and understand each other better. We remember that even though we're different, we're all human.
I love that. And speaking of sharing and connecting, I'm reminded of a quote by Maya Angelou. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you.
So true. And that's for all of us, no matter where we're from or what language we speak. We all have stories, and those stories need to be heard.
Exactly. Language gives us the ability to share those stories with the world.
So for everyone out there who have a story, don't be shy. Embrace the challenge, practice your English, and let your voice be heard. The world is listening.
I completely agree. And remember, there are so many things out there to help you, online courses, language partners. You have so many chances to improve your storytelling.
We've talked about so much today, from setting the scene to sharing our feelings, Sarah, before we wrap up. Do you have any last bits of advice for our listeners as they start their village storytelling adventures?
I do, and it goes back to what we've been saying all along. Don't be afraid to try things out, to play with language, to find your own way of expressing yourself. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
It's about finding your own voice, right? Embracing the things that make your story unique.
Exactly. As you practice and experiment, notice the moments that feel really strong or moving. What words or phrases create the best pictures? What stories get the biggest reactions?
It's like tuning an instrument, finding the perfect sound to capture your audience. And it's not just about capturing other people. It's also about helping us understand our villages and ourselves better.
You're right, Mike. When we think about our experiences and put them into words, we understand the little things about village life and how they've made us who we are.
Like looking at our memories with a magnifying glass and finding new things we never noticed before. And when we share those things, we help others see the world the way we see it, connect with us more deeply.
Perfectly said, Mike. And I think that's what storytelling is all about: creating connections, understanding each other, and remembering that we're all connected.
It's been amazing talking about how to describe a day in our villages. We talked about sensory details, personal reflections, and the power of telling our stories. But before we go, I want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your knowledge with us today.
It's been great, Mike. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. I hope you feel inspired to share your own village stories.
And remember, no matter how experienced you are, your voice is important. So take on the challenge, practice hard, and never stop exploring the magic of language.
I couldn't agree more. The world needs to hear your stories.
And if you like this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great insights into language and culture. See you next time. Happy storytelling.
I do, and it goes back to what we've been saying. Don't be afraid to try things out. Play with language, find your own way of expressing yourself. You know, what works for one person might not work for another, and that's totally fine.
It's all about finding your voice, right? Like what makes your story special.
Exactly. And as you practice and experiment, pay attention to the things that feel really strong or interesting, like what words or phrases paint the best picture, what stories get the best reactions.
It's like you said before, fine-tuning an instrument, finding that perfect sound to really connect with your audience. And, you know, it's not just about other people, it's also about helping us understand our villages and even ourselves better.
That's a great point, Mike. When we think about our experiences and put them into words, we start to see those little details about village life and how they've shaped who we are.
It's like we're looking back at our memories with a fresh perspective, finding new things we never saw before. And when we share those things, we help others see the world through our eyes, connect with us on a different level.
I like that, Mike. I think that's the most important thing about storytelling: creating connections, understanding each other, and remembering that we're all connected in some way.
It's been so great exploring how to describe a day in our villages. We've covered sensory details, personal reflections, and the power of sharing our stories. But before we wrap things up, I want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Mike. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. We hope you feel inspired to share your own village stories with everyone.
Yeah, and remember, no matter how much experience you have, your voice matters. So embrace the challenge, practice with passion, and never stop exploring the power of language.
Absolutely. The world needs to hear your stories.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting looks into language and culture. Until next time, happy storytelling. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and boy, am I excited you're joining us for this deep dive into something I think we all love, and that's, funny stories.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Sarah, and I'm here to help you share those hilarious moments, but in English.
Yeah, we all have those stories that make us laugh, I know, every time we think about them. Those personal blunders, those surprising moments, those things that just cracked everyone up. And today we're going to explore how to tell those stories, especially if you're learning English.
Absolutely. It's more than just, practicing English. Sharing stories helps you connect with people, build confidence in speaking, and it's just plain fun.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got to pick the right story, and I'm already feeling a little stuck.
Well, think about it this way. Which story brings a smile to your face just thinking about it, Which one do you find yourself wanting to tell over and over again?
Okay, I'm starting to see what you mean. It's not just about what happened, but how you felt, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that emotional memory that makes a story really come alive.
Okay, so let's say I have a few funny moments in mind. How do I pick the one? I've tripped up the stairs. I've accidentally called my teacher mom. I even once walked into a glass door.
Those all sound promising. But which one makes you laugh the most? Which one has the most potential for humor?
Okay, I think I've got it. Remember that time I completely messed up a presentation at work? Oh, man. It was a disaster. But looking back, it's kind of hilarious.
Now you're talking. A presentation gone wrong, that's comedy gold. So let's start building this story. How would you describe the humor? Was it awkward slapstick?
It was definitely awkward, like foot and mouth awkward. I was so nervous and I just blurted out the wrong thing at the wrong time.
I can already picture it. So we've got awkward humor. Now let's add some descriptive words. Was it cringeworthy, hilarious, mortifying?
All of the above, but definitely mortifying at the time. And speaking of words, what about those action verbs? Like, did I stumble through my notes or freeze on the spot?
Those are great. Those strong verbs are like adding sound effects to your story. And don't forget about idioms and phrases. They can add so much flavor and really capture the humor.
Oh yeah, like I wanted the earth to swallow me whole, or I could feel my face turning beet red, but I'm always a bit nervous about using idioms. I don't want to sound unnatural.
I hear ya. But with a little practice, you can use them confidently. Think of them as adding spice to your story. For instance, instead of saying, I was embarrassed, you could say, I wanted to crawl under my desk and disappear.
Okay, I see how that works. It paints a funnier picture. So we've got the story, the vivid memory, and we're building up those awesome descriptive words. What's next?
Now let's think about the structure of your story. It needs a clear beginning, middle, and end. Think of it like a mini movie with a captivating plot.
You mean like an intro, build-up, climax, and resolution?
Yes. Let's use your presentation story as an example. Your introduction sets the scene. You're nervous. It's a big presentation. Your boss is there. What else is happening?
Oh, and the projector isn't working. Classic presentation nightmare fuel.
Perfect. The tension is rising. Then comes the climax. You fumble with the slides, things go wrong, and you blurt out something completely off topic.
Okay, I'm seeing it now. The room goes silent. Everyone is staring.
Exactly. And then what happens? Does someone laugh? Does your boss say something?
Oh man, my boss just stared at me with this blank expression. It was the most awkward silence ever.
That is brilliant. So we have the build-up, the awkward blunder, and now we need the resolution. How did you get out of that situation?
Well, I stammered through an apology and somehow managed to get the projector working. The rest of the presentation was a blur.
And was everyone still cringing, or did people eventually relax?
Surprisingly, a few people started chuckling. I think they realized I was mortified and they kind of felt bad for me.
There you go. So you've got the awkward beginning, the disastrous climax, and then that resolution where the tension eases. But how do you make sure the story flows smoothly, especially in another language?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It's one thing to have the story in my head, but it's another to actually tell it in a way that makes sense.
Well, that's what transition words can come in handy. They're like bridges that connect the different parts of your story. Words like then, suddenly, because, but they help the listener follow all.
Okay, give me an example of how that works in my presentation story.
Sure, you could say, I was so nervous, but I tried to stay calm. Then the projector died. I panicked because I didn't know what to do. See how those little words make the story flow more smoothly.
Yeah. It's like adding signposts to guide the listener along. So we've got the structure, the transitions. What about the delivery? Some people are naturally funny, But what about those of us who are a little less expressive?
That's a great point. And it brings us to the next step, practice.
Okay, so we've got our story, our vocabulary, our structure, our transitions. Now it's time to actually tell the story.
Yeah, exactly. And don't worry, you don't have to be a stand-up comedian to tell a funny story. It's more about sharing your experience with energy and enthusiasm.
So how do we practice that? Do we just stand in front of the mirror and tell ourselves the story?
That's one way to do it. It can help you get comfortable with the words and the flow. But you can also try telling the story to a friend, family member, or even a pet. The key is to practice speaking out loud.
I see your point. But talking to myself in the mirror might make me feel more awkward. And what about those nonverbal cues? Like, how much should I use my hands? What kind of facial expressions work? It can feel overwhelming.
You're absolutely right. Those things matter too. Remember how you felt during the funny event. Were you surprised, excited, mortified? Let those emotions show on your face, and don't be afraid to use your hands to emphasize certain points.
So it's almost like acting. I have to channel my inner comedian.
In a way, yes. But remember, the goal isn't to be a stand-up comedian. It's to share your story authentically. Let your personality shine through.
That makes me feel better. Okay, so practice telling the story, let my emotions show, use my hands. Anything else I should keep in mind?
Tone of voice is incredibly important. Just like your facial expressions, your tone can convey humor, surprise, or even disbelief. Play around with different tones as you practice.
Interesting. It's like adding sound effects to the story with my voice. And speaking of recording, could that be helpful?
Absolutely. Recording yourself is a fantastic way to identify areas for improvement. You can listen back and pay attention to your pacing, pronunciation, and overall delivery.
It's like having a personal speech coach right in my pocket. But what if I make mistakes? I'm still learning English, and I'm bound to mess up.
Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. And honestly, mistakes can sometimes make the story even funnier.
That's so true. I've definitely had times when my English slip-up had everyone in stitches.
Exactly. Don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back. People appreciate authenticity. They connect with realness. So embrace those imperfections and just have fun.
This is so encouraging. I'm actually starting to get excited about sharing my presentation story. But where do I share it? It's not like I'm going to walk around telling strangers about my disastrous presentation.
Huh. Well, you could, but there are more structured ways to do it. Have you considered English conversation practice groups?
Oh yeah, those could be perfect. I've heard there are online groups too.
Absolutely. There are tons of online communities where people practice their English. It's a supportive and safe environment to share your story and get feedback.
I'm adding that to my to-do list. And hey, maybe I could even make a video for our YouTube channel. That would give me a reason to practice and really polish the story.
Now you're talking. Sharing your story on video is an awesome way to reach a wider audience and boost your confidence. Plus, it could help other English learners who are working on their story class skills.
I love that. It's all about embracing those funny moments and sharing them with the world. Okay, so we've covered so much ground today, choosing the right story, building our vocabulary, structuring our narrative, using transitions, practicing our delivery. What's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to leave with?
I think the most important thing is to remember that sharing your stories, even if your English isn't perfect, is a powerful way to connect with others and grow as a speaker. Don't be afraid to be yourself, have fun, and let your personality shine through.
I love that. It's all about embracing those funny moments and sharing them with the world. You know, all this talk about funny stories has got me thinking, I need to find my funniest story and give it a try. What about you? Do you have a go-to funny story?
Oh, I have tons, but that's a story for another day.
Fair enough. We'll have to have you back for another deep dive sometime soon. But for now, I think it's time to wrap things up. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
All right, well, this has been so much fun exploring how to tell funny stories in English, and especially for English learners. And we've learned a lot today, from choosing the right story to, really mastering those transitions. But remember, the most important thing is to just go for it. Don't be afraid to share those hilarious moments, even if your English isn't perfect.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your story is unique and your voice is valuable. And, laughter really is a universal language.
That's a great point. And you know what? I'm feeling so much more confident about sharing my own funny story now. I might even try out some of those idioms you mentioned.
I can't wait to hear it.
And hey, maybe some of our listeners out there are feeling inspired too. So if you're ready to share your funniest story in English, we'd love to hear it. Leave a comment below, join an English conversation group, or heck, even create a video. The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. And remember, the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Well said. And to our fantastic listeners, we want to say a huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of funny stories. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab's YouTube channel for more tips and tricks on speaking English confidently, and most importantly, having fun while doing it. We'll see you in the next episode. Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're joined by Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
We're going to be diving into a topic that I think is super relevant for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
How to speak on your first day at college in English. So it's a big one, right? You're walking onto campus for the first time.
Absolutely.
You're seeing new people everywhere. There's all this excitement and energy.
New faces, yeah.
And you might be feeling a little bit nervous about,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
approaching people and starting conversations in English.
Yeah, especially in a new environment like that where everything is new.
Exactly.
It can feel a little overwhelming.
So where do we even begin? Like, what are some of the first things that we should keep in mind when we want to make a good impression and start those conversations?
Well, it may seem obvious, but I think introductions are key.
Right.
They're really your first opportunity to connect with someone.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Introductions. What's a good way to approach someone and introduce yourself on that first day?
You can keep it pretty simple.
Keep it simple, right?
Think of it as a formula. You start with, hi, my name is your name.
Right.
Give them a little context, like where you're from or what you're studying. So, for instance, you could say, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Chicago, and I'm majoring in psychology.
I like that.
It's nice to meet you. Something like that.
Straightforward and effective.
Exactly.
But let's say we want to spice things up a little bit.
Okay.
How can we make those introductions more memorable or give people something to latch onto and start a conversation?
Yeah, I love that idea because, you can add a little detail about yourself that's a little more unique.
Okay.
Something to spark curiosity.
I like it.
So instead of just saying, I'm Mike from California, you could say, I'm Mike, I'm from California, and I'm a huge classic rock fan.
Nice.
Always looking for new bands to discover, something like that.
That's great. So
Yeah.
you're giving them a little hook
Exactly.
to start a conversation.
Right.
But it's not just about the words, is it?
No, it's not,
What else should we be thinking about?
nonverbal communication is huge.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a new environment and maybe you're not as confident in your language skills.
So what are some of those nonverbal cues that we should be paying attention to?
Well, first and foremost, you want to smile. A genuine smile can go a long way.
It's true.
It makes you seem more approachable and friendly.
What about eye contact? I know that's important in American culture at least,
Absolutely.
but how do you strike that balance between making eye contact and being a little bit too intense?
Right. Yeah, you don't want to stare someone down.
Right.
But you do want to look at them when you're talking to them.
Okay.
Just glance away naturally. Yeah.
Make it a natural kind of flow.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the introduction down, we're smiling, we're making eye contact.
Right.
What comes next?
Well, sometimes those initial hellos can be followed by some awkward silence.
Uh-oh.
So that's where you want to have a few open-ended questions up your sleeve.
Okay.
Those can be really helpful.
Give me some examples.
Sure. So you could ask something like, what made you choose this college?
Okay.
Or what are you most looking forward to this semester?
I like those.
Yeah. Just something to get the other person talking.
And get them sharing a little bit about themselves.
Exactly.
But it's a two-way street, right?
It is.
We don't want to just be firing off questions at people.
Well, no, you want to listen.
How do we show that we're listening?
Ask follow-up questions
Okay.
based on what they're saying.
So if someone says, oh, I'm really excited about this particular class.
You could say, oh, what is it about that class that interests you?
I see.
Show that you're actually paying attention
That's great.
to what they're saying.
And I think one of the things that a lot of English learners struggle with is moving beyond those one-word or short answers like yes and no.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap.
How do we push past that and give people a little bit more to work with?
Yeah, I think instead of just giving a yes or no answer, try adding a sentence or two
Okay.
to kind of elaborate on what thought.
So instead of just saying yes,
Right.
you might say,
You could say, yes, I love living in the city. There's always something going on, and I enjoy exploring new neighborhoods.
that's a great example.
So you're giving them
So you're giving them a little bit more to go on.
Exactly.
And showing that you're,
And that you're enthusiastic.
enthusiastic. There you go.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I've always found interesting about college is that there's a whole kind of lingo,
Oh, yeah.
a set of phrases.
Campus lingo.
It's like its own little world.
Yeah, so let's play a little game.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out a phrase, and you tell me what it actually means.
Okay, I like it.
On a college campus. So first one, what's up? So they're not actually asking you what's happening in the sky.
I see.
It's more of a greeting.
Okay.
Okay, how are you?
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay, how about, do you want to grab lunch?
that's a pretty straightforward one. They're asking you to go eat lunch with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
It's a good one.
Okay, but even with all these tips, I think it's natural to still feel a little bit nervous on your first day.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that normal?
Totally normal. I think everyone feels that way.
Even native English speakers?
Even native English speakers.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
new environment. You're meeting new people.
It's a big day.
It's a big day.
So how do we deal with those nerves? Any advice?
I think it helps to try and reframe those nerves as excitement.
Okay.
It's the same energy,
Interesting.
just channeled in a different direction.
I like that.
And remember, most people are in the same boat.
They are.
They're feeling a little bit nervous too.
So don't worry too much.
Exactly.
But let's be real.
Yeah,
We're going to make mistakes,
of course.
especially when we're speaking in a new language.
It's part of the process.
What do we do when that happens?
Just laugh it off, apologize if you need to,
Okay.
and keep going.
Keep going.
Most people are understanding. They appreciate the effort you're making.
Absolutely. And I can totally relate to that. I remember one time during my first week of college, I was so nervous that I accidentally called my professor Mom.
Oh my God.
It was so embarrassing.
I can imagine.
But you know what? He was totally cool about it.
That's great.
We all laughed. And it actually broke the ice a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes those awkward moments can turn into something positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about introductions, we've talked about breaking the ice.
Right.
We've talked about active listening, but college is also a lot about group conversations.
Yeah.
How do we approach those?
Yeah, that can feel a little intimidating.
A little bit.
You've got a whole group of people.
Yeah.
You want to join in?
Yeah, how do we
So first, I would say just observe the group for a minute.
observe?
What's the energy like?
Okay.
Are they having a serious discussion or are they just chatting and laughing?
So get a feel for the vibe.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then look for a natural opening.
Okay.
Maybe someone says something that you really agree with.
Okay.
You can use a phrase like, I totally agree with that because,
Okay.
or that's an interesting point I was actually thinking.
So you're building on what they've already said.
Exactly.
And showing that you're engaged.
Right.
But what if we're completely lost?
Ask for clarification.
It's okay to do that.
Absolutely. It's much better to ask than to pretend you understand.
So how would we phrase that?
You could say something like, sorry, I'm not sure I follow. Could you explain that again?
Got it.
Or could you repeat that, please? I want to make sure I understand.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So before we actually, dive into all these conversations, are there any things that we can do to prepare ahead of time?
Practice.
Practice. Okay.
Practice makes perfect, right? So you can imagine different conversation scenarios.
Okay.
Maybe role play with a friend or a family member.
So like a little rehearsal.
Yeah, exactly.
What if we don't have someone to practice with?
There's tons of resources online.
Oh, okay.
You can watch videos of college students interacting.
Okay.
You can listen to podcasts about college life, lots of options.
Right.
And, you can even just talk to yourself in English.
Talk to yourself.
Practice introducing yourself.
Interesting.
Talk about your interest.
Okay.
It might feel silly,
Yeah.
but it can really help.
So it's all about getting comfortable with the language.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes it's not just about the practical skills.
Right.
It's about the mindset. Any advice on how we can approach those conversations with the right attitude?
I think one of the most important things is to remember that everyone feels a little awkward and uncertain on their first day.
Mhm.
It's a brand new experience.
True.
So be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself.
Cut yourself some slack.
I like that.
And remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn and grow.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate, it's okay to feel nervous.
Absolutely.
But with a little preparation and a positive attitude,
Yeah.
you can definitely rock those first day conversations.
I think so.
I think so too.
I got this.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll be exploring the power of body language.
That's right.
Stay tuned.
See you then.
Welcome back to the Learn English Lab.
We're back.
And we're continuing our deep dive into, how to end those conversations on your first day of college.
All those new faces. Yeah.
Now, we talked in the last part about introductions, breaking the ice, asking questions.
Right. The basics.
But I want to talk about something that I think is really important, but often gets overlooked.
Okay. What's that?
Body language.
Ah, yes. Body language.
It's so crucial
It is. It really is.
because it can convey so much.
Absolutely. Even more so than our words sometimes.
Right. And I think especially for English learners, when you're maybe not as confident in your spoken English, your body language can really help to get your message across.
Yeah. Fill in those gaps.
So let's talk about some specific tips for using body language effectively on that first day.
Okay. Sounds good.
What are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Well, let's start with posture.
Okay?
Think about it when you see someone who's slouching or kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
What impression does that give you?
Not very confident.
Exactly.
Maybe a little bit closed off.
Right. Whereas someone who stands up straight, shoulders back, head held high,
Yeah.
they project confidence and openness.
It's like they're saying, I'm here and I'm ready to engage.
Exactly.
Okay, so posture check. What else?
Smiling. Smile. Can't forget about that.
It's so important.
It is, a genuine smile can really put people at ease.
Makes you seem more approachable.
Absolutely.
But how about eye contact?
Ah, yes, eye contact, the tricky one.
It's important, but I also don't want to make people uncomfortable by staring them down.
Right, you don't want to be too intense.
So how do you find that balance?
You want to make eye contact when you're listening to someone.
Right.
And when you're talking to them.
Okay.
But just break it naturally from time to time.
Don't hold it for too long.
Exactly. Just glance away every so often.
Make it feel natural.
Exactly.
Now, there's another techniques that I've heard about called mirroring.
Oh, yes, mirroring. That's a good one.
Tell me about that.
So basically, you subtly reflect the other person's body language.
Oh, interesting.
So if they lean in, you might lean in a little bit too. If they have their arms crossed, you might do the same.
So you're kind of subconsciously saying, hey, we're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. It can help create a sense of rapport.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got posture, smiling, eye contact, mirroring. What about hand gestures?
Hand gestures, yeah. I mean, they can be great.
I've seen some people get a little carried away.
Right, you don't want to overdo it,
Yeah.
but using your hand list can definitely add emphasis.
Right.
And make you seem more expressive.
Like adding a little bit of flavor to your conversation.
Exactly.
So I think the takeaway here is that body language is a really powerful tool,
Absolutely.
and we should be paying attention to it,
It can make a big difference.
especially in those first impressions.
Especially on that first day, yeah.
So stand tall, smile, make eye contact, use those hand gestures strategically, and most importantly, be yourself.
Yes, authenticity is key.
Absolutely.
Let your personality shine through.
We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up with some final thoughts. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. We've talked about a lot, introductions, body language, active listening.
Even some campus lingo.
But there's one more thing that I want to touch on
Okay.
before we wrap up.
I'm all yours.
And it's kind of the secret sauce.
Oh.
Ties everything together.
Okay, tell me more.
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
Being genuine.
Yes,
Letting your personality shine through.
that's so important.
Because you can have all the right words, you can have all the right body language.
Right.
But if you're not being yourself,
Yeah.
people can sense that.
Absolutely. They can tell if you're not being genuine.
It's like trying to fit into a mold that just doesn't quite work.
It just doesn't feel right.
So as you're going into those conversations on your first day, just remember,
Yeah.
relax.
Relax and be yourself.
Be yourself.
People will appreciate that.
Because ultimately, people connect with other people.
Exactly.
And they connect with people who are genuine and authentic.
Right. And, sometimes the best conversations are the ones that don't go according to plan.
Oh, absolutely.
It's those unexpected moments.
Yeah.
The shared laughter, the genuine connection.
That's what makes it memorable.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to go off script a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe share a funny story or ask a question that's a little bit different.
Be curious.
Be curious.
Yeah,
Exactly.
let the conversation flow naturally.
Yeah. Let the conversation flow naturally.
Yeah, let the conversation flow naturally.
So I think to wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
remember that confidence comes not just from the techniques,
Right.
but also from being comfortable with who you are
Absolutely.
and letting that shine through.
Embrace your unique perspective,
Yeah.
your experiences. They're valuable.
Absolutely.
So share them.
So every conversation is a chance to learn and grow.
It is.
And who knows, you might make some lifelong friends along the way.
That would be amazing.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
So just soak it all in, enjoy the experience, and remember, we believe in you.
I do.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive,
Yes.
don't forget to share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more English learning tips and tricks.
We'll see you next time.
See you soon. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. We're diving into something pretty important for anyone learning English, how to speak about health and hygiene. I'm Mike, and with me today I have Sarah, our expert in helping English learners grasp all the ins and outs of health-related vocabulary and conversations.
Happy to be here.
So before we get to all the cool stuff Sarah has to share, let's talk about why this is a game changer. Being able to discuss health in English. I mean, think about it. Going to the doctor, chatting with friends about how you're feeling, or even just describing your daily routine, it all comes down to knowing the right words for health and hygiene.
Absolutely. It's all about feeling confident, and being able to communicate in those situations effectively.
All right, let's start with something fun. English has a bunch of quirky idioms related to health. You've probably heard someone say they're feeling under the weather, right?
Yeah, that's a classic one. Just means not feeling well.
Exactly. But what about fit as a fiddle?
Oh, that's a great way to describe someone who's in excellent health.
I love idioms. They add so much personality to the language. But now let's get down to some essential vocabulary. Imagine you're not feeling great, Sarah. You might say, I have an illness. But let's say you're dealing with a diagnosed condition like diabetes. That's when you'd use disease. Diabetes is a disease. So it's all about choosing the right level of detail.
Exactly. Illness is more general. Disease refers to a specific condition, a diagnosed condition.
And what about those signs? The telltale signs that you're getting sick. What word do we use for those?
Those are symptoms, like my symptoms include a fever and a cough.
Right. And then there's pain, that physical discomfort we all experience from time to time, like I have pain in my back.
Yes, those are the basics for talking about how you feel.
Now let's say you wake up with a pounding head. You could say, I have a headache. But what if it's really intense? How would you describe that?
Well, instead of just saying terrible or splitting, which we hear a lot, why not use something like my head is throbbing or I have a sharp pain above my eyes? This gives a clearer picture to whoever you're talking to, like if it's a doctor.
That's a great point. It's not just about using bigger words, but choosing words that really paint a picture. What if that headache comes with nausea?
You could say, I have a headache and I feel nauseous.
Perfect. It's like building blocks, combining the right vocabulary to express how you feel. Speaking of combining, let's move on to daily hygiene routines. Instead of you saying, I brush my teeth, you could say, I brush my teeth twice a day, once in the morning and once before bed. What other details can we add to make these descriptions more interesting?
You could talk about the type of toothpaste I use. If you floss, if you use mouthwash, for example. I use whitening toothpaste and floss every night before bed.
Great idea. The more details you provide, the more natural and fluent you sound.
Absolutely. And don't forget about other hygiene habits like showering, washing your hands, using deodorant, all great opportunities to practice using more specific language.
Right. Instead of I take a shower, you could say I take a hot shower every morning to wake myself up, or I always wash my hands before eating and after using the restroom.
Yeah, those little details make your English sound more natural, and it paints a clearer picture for whoever's listening.
Now, we've talked about describing symptoms and hygiene routines, but what happens when we need to ask for or give health advice? That can be tricky.
It can be. You have to be mindful and use the right tone, especially when talking about someone's health.
Definitely. So instead of bluntly saying you should drink more water, how could you phrase that more delicately?
You could try something like, have you considered drinking more water? It might help. Or, it's generally recommended to drink plenty of water throughout the day.
Those are great. It's about making advice sound helpful and supportive, not bossy. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about healthy habits. In English, how can we describe our exercise routines in a more engaging way?
Well, rather than just saying, I go to the gym, be more specific about what you do and how often. For instance, I go to the gym 3 times a week and focus on strength training. Or I love going for a run in the park every evening.
I love those examples. They make your routine come to life. And what about diet? How can we talk about healthy eating habits more descriptively?
Well, think about what kinds of food you eat and how often. Instead of I eat healthily, you could say I try to include fruits and vegetables in every meal, or I avoid processed foods and sugary drinks.
Those are great examples. By using more descriptive language, you can express yourself more clearly and confidently in English. And remember, the key to mastering any language is practice.
Absolutely. The more you use these phrases, these vocabulary words in conversations, the more natural they'll become.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to remind everyone that learning a language is a journey, not a race. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Yeah, be patient with yourself, celebrate your successes, and just keep practicing. And don't forget to have fun along the way. Learning English should be enjoyable.
That's so true. It really is. And it's all about being open to discovering how language and culture kind of intertwined. Have you noticed how some English idioms about health have really interesting origins?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like kick the bucket. Who thinks of buckets when they think about, passing away?
Exactly. It's believed to have originated from a pretty grim practice centuries ago. But now it's a common way to say someone has died. A bit informal though.
It's crazy how language evolves. But let's talk about something more practical now. How to describe our health routine so we sound natural and fluent. Okay, yeah. And one way to do that is by adding those little details that bring your descriptions to life. Instead of, I exercise, you could say, I enjoy going for brisk walks in the morning before work, or I've recently taken up yoga and I find it super relaxing.
I love that. It really does paint a picture, almost like I can see you doing those activities. What about food and diet? Any tips for sounding more natural?
Definitely. So instead of just listing foods you eat, try incorporating phrases that express your preferences or habits. I have a sweet tooth, so I'm trying to cut back on sugary drinks, or I'm really into trying new recipes, especially those with lots of fresh vegetables.
Those are great. It's like we get a glimpse into your lifestyle. Now let's move on to something that can be a bit delicate, asking for and giving health advice. In English, what are some things to keep in mind?
Well, first of all, it's important to be mindful of the other person's feelings and avoid sounding judgmental. Even if you're offering advice with good intentions, it's important to use language that conveys empathy and respect.
That's an important point. Let's say a friend mentions they're struggling with fatigue. What would be a good way to offer advice?
You could acknowledge their experience first and express concern before jumping in with solutions like, I'm sorry to hear you're feeling so tired, that must be tough. Then you could suggest exploring causes, gently, Like, have you thought about talking to your doctor? Could be related to stress or maybe a vitamin deficiency.
That's a great approach, not dismissing their feelings, but offering helpful suggestions without being pussy. And speaking of being sensitive, I imagine there are things to consider when discussing health with people from different backgrounds.
Right, definitely. Cultural beliefs and practices around health can be very different. Some cultures might rely heavily on traditional medicine or home remedies, while others might prefer conventional medical treatments. It's important to be aware of these differences and approach conversations with an open mind.
That's a great reminder. Being curious and respectful of different perspectives is so important, especially in healthcare.
It really is. And don't be afraid to ask questions if you're unsure about something. People usually appreciate it when you show a genuine interest in understanding their point of view.
I love that. Curiosity and open communication, those are like two key ingredients for good conversations about health, no matter what language you speak. Now, let's imagine a scenario many listeners might find themselves in, visiting a doctor in an English-speaking country.
Yeah, okay. Let's explore some key phrases and tips to help you feel more confident, like knowing how to describe your symptoms clearly and accurately so you can communicate well with your doctor.
Exactly. Let's say you have a nagging cough. You could say, I've had this annoying cough for a week now, and it's worse at night. Being specific about how long you've had it and how bad it is helps the doctor get a better picture.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use really descriptive language to paint a clear picture. If your throat is sore, you could say, my throat feels scratchy and it hurts when I swallow. These details can help a lot for the doctor to make a diagnosis.
Those are some good tips. What if you need to ask the doctor to explain something or clarify something you don't understand? Maybe a medical term.
That's okay, don't worry. You can always ask for clarification. You can say something like, could you explain that in simpler terms, please? Or, I don't know that word, what does it mean? Doctors are used to explaining these things to patients, and they want you to understand what's going on.
Those phrases are really useful. Advocating for yourself and making sure you understand your own health is important. And let's not forget cultural differences when interacting with healthcare professionals.
Absolutely. It's a crucial part of good communication. For example, in some cultures, it's not okay to directly contradict a doctor or question their authority. However, in many English-speaking cultures, it's encouraged to have open communication. Between doctor and patient, you have the right to ask questions and be involved in your healthcare decisions.
That's such an important difference. Understanding these nuances can really help us communicate better and advocate for our own needs. Now let's focus on another common health topic, discussing mental health in English.
Yes, that's important. You need to be able to express how you're feeling emotionally and mentally and understand the language. Like if you're anxious, you could say, I've been feeling pretty stressed out, or I've been dealing with some anxiety.
Great examples. And like with physical health, be specific. If you're overwhelmed, you could say, I'm feeling super overwhelmed with work, and it's hard to cope. Giving those details helps others understand how you're feeling.
Exactly. And don't forget, asking for support is a sign of strength, not weakness.
I agree completely. There are so many resources for those who need help, mental health help, online and in local communities. Now let's take a step back and think about what we've covered so far about talking about this in English. We've talked about vocabulary, idioms, cultural sensitivity, seeing a doctor. So much.
Yeah, it's a lot. I hope our listeners are feeling a bit more confident in their ability to have these conversations. Remember, practice makes perfect. The more you use these phrases and words, the easier it becomes.
Well said. Speaking of practice, how about we do a role-playing exercise to help our listeners really apply what they've learned? Let's pretend you're the doctor and I'm the patient. I've come to you with this weird problem. Can you diagnose me based on my symptoms?
Let's do it. I'm ready for the challenge.
Great. All right, Doc, I've been feeling a bit off lately. This headache won't go away and my stomach feels all messed up. And I haven't been eating much. Plus, I can't seem to sleep. What do you think is wrong with me?
Okay, that's interesting. Tell me, have you had any other changes in your health? Any fever, chills, nausea? When did this start?
No fever or chills, just a bit of nausea here and there. It all started about a week ago. Started with a mild headache, then it got worse.
I see. What have you been eating and drinking? Anything unusual?
Not really. Same as usual. Lots of fruit and veggies and lean protein. But I've been having more coffee, trying to stay awake with this headache.
Oh, see. Well, Mike, it sounds like you might be stressed and dehydrated. The headache, the stomach, the sleep problems could all be from stress. And drinking more coffee is probably making the dehydration worse. You should try to manage the stress. Exercise, meditation, maybe some time in nature, and drink lots of water. Stay hydrated. And cut back on the caffeine and sugary drinks. They'll dehydrate you even more.
Wow, that's amazing, Doc. I didn't think the headache could be from stress. I'm not drinking enough water. Thanks for the advice.
You're welcome. And if it doesn't get better or if it gets worse, make another appointment.
That was fun. Great exercise. I think that really showed everyone how to describe symptoms and talk to a doctor in English. But now let's talk about something a bit more difficult, talking about death and dying. It can be hard to talk about these things, even in our own languages. How do we approach them in English? In a respectful way, and with compassion.
Yeah, that's a good question, one that needs a lot of sensitivity. The most important thing is to use the right language and tone. No euphemisms or slang, that could be disrespectful. Just clear and direct language, but always with empathy.
That makes sense. So instead of kick the bucket, we could say they passed away or died.
Exactly. And when you want to offer condolences, use words of comfort and support, like, I'm so sorry for your loss, or thinking of you during this tough time.
Those are really nice things to say. They can be comforting. But what about end-of-life care or funerals? Those can be harder conversations.
Oh, definitely. In those situations, being clear and open is crucial. Respect the wishes of the person and their family, and use sensitive and respectful language. For example, talking about funeral arrangements, you could say, would you like some help making the arrangements? Or is there anything I can do to support you during this time?
Those are good examples. Being thoughtful can make a difference, especially to someone who's grieving. And speaking of cultural sensitivity, I imagine customs and beliefs about death are different in different cultures.
Oh, absolutely. Different cultures have all sorts of traditions and rituals. Some cultures have specific mourning periods or ways of doing things. Others express grief more openly or more privately. It's important to be respectful of these differences and be open to learning.
You're right. Being culturally sensitive is so important in every part of life, especially when talking about delicate subjects like death. Let's move on to something else. Chronic illnesses and disabilities.
Okay, yeah. Talking about those things requires sensitivity, empathy, and learning from people's lived experiences.
For sure. And using respectful language is key. Instead of saying someone suffers from an illness, we could say they live with or manage that condition.
That's a great point. It's about recognizing those things are a part of someone's life, not their whole identity. And when you're discussing these topics, listen carefully, ask thoughtful questions, and don't assume things or give advice when it's not asked for.
That's all great advice. It's about creating a space for people to share and feel heard. Now let's talk about mental health. It's become such a crucial topic. Being able to talk about our feelings and understand the language used in these conversations is so important.
You're right. We need to remember mental health is as important as physical health, and it's okay to talk about struggles and to get help. There are a lot of resources for people struggling with mental health, online and in communities.
Exactly. When we're talking about mental health in English, there are some key phrases that are good to know. Like if you're feeling anxious, you could say, I've been feeling quite anxious lately, or I'm having a hard time with anxiety.
Those are good examples. And when someone is talking to you about their mental health, be empathetic and validate their feelings. You could say, that sounds really hard. I'm sorry you're going through that.
That's a good way to show support and that you care. As we wrap up this part about mental health, I want to say again that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. There are many people who can help you on your journey.
I agree, you are not alone. Many people struggle with mental health. It's okay to ask for help.
Well said. Now let's talk about something interesting. The role of body language and nonverbal cues in healthcare.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We know words are important, but nonverbal communication is also a big deal. It affects how we get our message across, especially in healthcare, like eye contact, facial expressions, having an open posture. All of these can help us communicate better.
It's true, and it's important to be aware of cultural differences. What might be considered polite in one culture could be different in another.
That's right. For example, in some cultures, looking directly at someone's eyes is seen as a sign of respect, but in other cultures, it might be rude. Being aware of these things can help prevent misunderstandings.
Those are really good examples. And we can't forget about personal space, especially in healthcare. Respect people's boundaries. You don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable.
Definitely. Many English-speaking cultures value personal space. Keep a good distance, especially during examinations or medical procedures.
It's a good reminder. As we wrap up this deep dive into how to talk about health in English, let's leave our listeners with a question to think about. We've covered so much today: vocabulary, idioms, cultural differences, active listening, doctor's appointments, and more. But what's the most important thing to remember when we're talking about health, no matter what language we're speaking?
That's a good question. I think it all comes down to empathy and respect, and really wanting to connect with other people. When we have those things in mind, language becomes less of a barrier, and we can connect with each other in a way that promotes understanding and well-being.
That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect way to end this episode. Thanks for joining us on this journey into health communication in English. We hope it was helpful, interesting, and empowering.
It was great to be here. And remember, if you found this episode helpful, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our Learn English Lab YouTube channel, and share this with your friends. Keep practicing, stay curious, and take care.
Bye, everyone.
It really is. It's like we're not only hearing the words, but we're also trying to understand the emotions behind them, all those nonverbal cues.
Exactly. But how can we be better active listeners, especially when talking about health?
Well, one thing is don't interrupt. Let the person finish what they're saying. Ask questions to make sure you understand. You can even summarize what you've heard to be sure you're on the same page.
Those are really helpful tips. It's like we're building a connection with every question and every time we show we're paying attention. But let's talk about something specific now, something many of our listeners might experience. Going to the doctor in an English-speaking country. What are some good phrases to know?
Okay, so a really important one is, I'd like to make an appointment with the doctor. You can also say what kind of doctor you need, like a general practitioner or a specialist or a dentist.
That's a good start. But what about when you're actually at the appointment? How can you explain how you're feeling clearly, and so the doctor understands?
Try to be as specific as you can. Don't just say, I feel sick. Say, I have a sharp pain in my stomach, or I've been coughing a lot. Tell them where it hurts, how bad it is, and how long it's been going on. The more information you give, the better.
That makes sense. What if you need to tell the doctor about your medical history? Or if you're allergic to something?
Oh, then you can say, I have a history of asthma, or I'm allergic to penicillin, and bring a list of your medications with you. That's always helpful.
Those are some really good tips. What if you need to ask the doctor to explain something you don't understand? Like a medical word or something?
It's totally fine to ask. Don't be shy. You can say, can you explain that in a simpler way, please? Or, I don't know what that word means. Can you tell me? Doctors are used to explaining things to their patients. They want you to understand.
Those are great phrases to know. It's important to feel comfortable asking questions and to make sure we understand what's going on with our own health. Speaking of understanding, we can't forget about being sensitive to other cultures in healthcare.
You're so right. What's considered normal in one culture might be different in another. Like some cultures have different beliefs about pain relief or end-of-life care. We need to be respectful of those differences and be open to learning.
Absolutely. Cultural sensitivity is crucial. It helps create a more welcoming environment for everyone.
Well, I wrap up this deep dive on speaking about health in English. Let's leave our listeners with a question to think about. We've talked about vocabulary, idioms, cultural differences, understanding the doctor, and so much more. What's the most important thing to remember when we're talking about health, no matter what language we speak?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is empathy, respect, and really wanting to understand each other. When we start from there, language is less of a problem, and we can really connect with each other in a way that helps everyone.
That's a wonderful thought, and a perfect way to end our episode. To everyone listening, Soku so much for joining us on this journey into the world of health communication. In English, we hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little bit fun. Absolutely. And don't forget, practice makes perfect. So keep using what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe to our Learn English Lab YouTube channel and tell your friends. Until next time, stay curious and take care of yourselves.
Bye, everyone.